Welcome to Friday's video in our Master Series. This is the 56th video in our Master Series, the 26th video in our first phase processing, and the 5th video on our equalization. So in this video, we want to go to the next step. In the last video, we talked about brick wall filtering, so to try to stop issues, we talked about going through and doing our filtering again to make sure that we've cleaned out any unneeded content and dealt with any issues that we might have heard. And if I didn't make it clear, when you're sweeping around, takes time, because you really need to spend some time with this, because really being able to hear if there's an issue or not, and then being able to sweep around to try to find it takes time. There's no way to teach that, because first of all, it might not be an issue to someone else's ear, and the second thing, you might hear it a little different, and then trying to teach that's very difficult, because it's like, well, you hear it, and it's like as you get more experienced and you practice doing it, that you sweeping around, you might hear something doesn't sound quite right. What is that? And you start dropping it down a bit and sweeping around, sometimes dropping down a lot, and just sweeping around looking for it. It takes time to get good at doing that, and you just have to practice. So the next thing, we come to our equalization, our equal loudness contour work. Now, we talked about how the ear hears sounds, so why we are doing this? Well, the biggest thing is because the ear hears sound like this. If the frequency range that they're singing is from whatever to whatever, that the issue with this is that as those frequencies move around, they're boosted and attenuated in those areas first, so that frequency content inherent in that sound sounds equal in sound. Now, that might sound funny, but let's say that I'm singing this note down here, and right here, and it's going all the way from 500 hertz up to here. I've got this huge envelope of sound that's going across this, or at any point. The problem is that if I don't boost or attenuate in these areas and my static EQ work, then harmonic content in the sound itself and inside this sound's envelope won't be being heard as well as you could hear it. That means, like, if I sing a note at 500 hertz and the trailing harmonics go all the way out here, if I don't boost here and attenuate here or fuss with it, I might not need to, but most of the time it helps. Then you are able to hear all the fundamentals and all the harmonic content really clearly, that makes the sound really rich and full. It's that simple, and it's something that just takes time, because of when you're dealing with this sound, that when I go to here and I'm listening to this sound and I'm seeing this harmonic content, that I'm going to take this off here. I'm going to take this off here and this off here, off that previous step for now. The issue is as you hear these other frequencies, that as this plays along, that these frequency content, even if you've sculpted or whatever, that you boosting in these areas and attenuating in these areas makes it sound fuller and richer. So it's like the lower end, you're boosting up some, but it might not look like it because this is way down here. This isn't even hardly anywhere near it. But it's following this slope all the way along the spectrum between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. So anything moving around in there, if it happens to fall into this lower range or it starts moving in the upper range, that those frequencies are boosted or attenuated the way the ear hears sounds, so that it's clearer. And it's amazing, especially on vocals, that all of a sudden that the vocal just sounds super rich and all the harmonic content sounds really clear, because you're dealing with that around 500 hertz that is at zero. And you have to boost these frequencies, attenuate these frequencies, and boost these frequencies, and boost these frequencies, so they sound like they're the same level. So all of a sudden, you're hearing these other frequency content instead of this frequency content here being soft and you're not hearing it well, this frequency content being too loud and overpowering this frequency content, or in this frequency content being way too low, so you're not hearing it really well. Same with the lower end. That way, it starts to make it really rich and full. So basically, what I recommend is taking a parametric EQ like this. I've got a few settings. I got one that's basically set at the equal loudness contour, and this is basically the settings like I'm looking at it on this picture that I've showed you. And I've got different levels of that. This is a little bit lesser level. This is a little bit lesser level. This is less. This is less. I even have one say here that just barely a touch, boosting and attenuating those areas just a little bit, because I found that useful as a starting point sometimes. But, I start fussing with it. I start there. It's too much. Come down. Come down. It might be like this one right here or this one right here. I'm at fourth one. And it's like, it's sounding pretty good there. No, I don't know. I've A-B it back fourth. I'm going to go back up to this one that's about at 3. Because between these ones here, they're all of them are I'm subtracting from the boost and subtraction I've added a little bit, so it's tightening up and coming closer together instead of the huge attenuations and boosted, at first. And I know that sounds funny, that takes some experimentation and work, but I get it down around in there, and this vocal may or may not sound, that sounds really good. But now I'm not working on any other frequencies except for those ranges that the equal loudness contour dictates need to be adjusted so that all the harmonic content is heard at equal levels to give it a nice lush full sound, so my ear hears it at the levels that it should, so that it perceives the levels at equal levels to cause the enriching effect that it does. So some frequency content isn't too loud, some frequency content too soft, as in comparison to the fundamental. And so then I'll start fussing with it. I will turn some of them off sometimes and go, well, no, the bass, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but I think it might, with the way it's set, I could bring it down maybe a little bit. That sounds pretty good. Well, too much. It takes some fussing sometimes, and I'll maybe go to this one. Nah, that could be boosted a little bit more. Nah, maybe not. Maybe it needs to be subtracted a little more. This one over here, no, I could actually fuss with it, A-B it back and forth. No, I can actually cut out just a little bit more right there. And this upper end, no, I'm thinking I could boost that up a little bit. Actually, well, A-B it back and forth. Yeah, I can even bring it up maybe a little bit more right there. That sounds pretty dang good. It will cause the actual sound to get this full, rich sound. Vocals, this is a huge thing on. Sometimes you got to be real careful about synth patches and things like that, fussing with the EQ too much on something that you've already sound sculpted it, and you don't really want to fuss with the EQ because it changes the whole sound. But natural sounds, this does phenomenal work on, because now all of a sudden this vocal sounds, whereas before, with it off, it sounds not too bad, like I recorded it and captured it, and I've done some sound sculpting on it, and But now, all of a sudden, it just sounds rich and full. The low end sounds full, the upper end sounds full. In the mid-range, it sounds about where it's supposed to be, around between 1 and 2K. It's boosted a little bit so that it's not too quiet and getting drowned out by the mid-range. Over in here, this has been attenuated so that it's not it's not drowning this out. Does that make sense? And so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, it just sounds rich and full. This whole concept and using it takes a lot of experimentation. When I first started doing it, I didn't really understand what the heck I was doing and why. And I really went through a phase that I got frustrated with it, because I'd start out with it and I'd go, I eventually came to the understanding that doing it by hand was a pain. And it just was, because doing it one at a time, like let's say I started out with default settings, and I go, okay, I'm going to boost this bass end, and I'm going to set this Q. Now how does it sound? Well, it sounds all out of whack, bro, because, I didn't already attenuate, boost in this area, attenuate in this area, and boost in this area, so it sounds out of whack. So all of a sudden, it's like way too much bass, bro. I mean, it's like, and that sounds horrible. It's got way too much bass. And I finally came to the understanding that what I needed to do, start out with the equal loudness contour on there, set about the levels that it dictates, and then set different, amounts of that. So that's less, that's less, that's less, that's less. And I've got about 4 or 5 of them there, including that little one there, that those are my starting ones. And I've found that most of the time I can go down and say, well, that one, that's a little much. This one, that one's pretty good. You know, I mean, it sounds like it might need a little bit of work, but it sounds pretty good. I might have to boost this one up a little bit more there. I might have to take a little bit away from that one. I might have to bring that down or push that up just a little bit. I might have to bring this down quite a bit, or I may even have to boost that up a little bit to fuss around with it until it's doing what it's supposed to do. That way that the low end's got in that sound has got a real nice lush low end. You know, this mid range is the level it's supposed to be. Between 1 and 2K is boosted up a little bit so that the mid range isn't drowning it out. Between 2 and 5K that I've brought it down a little bit because it's overpowering this mid range stuff, and the upper end stuff is really quiet, and so I've boosted it way up so that it all is, you know, sounding like it's about the equal level. Which sounds funny when you think about, you know, an envelope of sound goes like this. You know, it's got a fundamental and trailing frequencies. Why would you want to boost it like that? Well, the issue is that it does phenomenal. It has a phenomenal effect on the sound, on making it rich and full, and all the harmonics really clear to your ear, so that it just sounds like it just got a lot of body, a lot of upper end, lower end, the mid range and the upper mid range, and all the frequencies sound nice and full, and you're hearing them well, and it's just crystal clear, and it's just like, wow, man, that is so cool. It sounds so nice now. This is a work in progress. Just being able to understand that and to be able to start using it in the ways that I'm talking about and starting to experiment with it is going to have a huge impact on how you see EQ and how good of a job you do equalization. So this is the next step that you would need to work on. You can get in contact with me if that doesn't make much sense, or if you're not understanding some part of that, and download a picture of the equal loudness contour and start working on it, because basically you want to set up an equalizer that's got you around between, you know, 500 between so far these hertz, because this is 500 hertz, then you're going up here, right? You got 100, 200, 3, 4, 500 hertz. Between 500 hertz and 1000 hertz, it's pretty flat. And then you've got this boost here and this subtraction here and this boost here and it dropping off there and this going up here. Does that make sense? So you have to fuss with your EQ and then make it at different levels so you can test different amounts of it on there to make it do a good job, like I showed you here, because on mine I have this set up to where it's, you know, a lot, you know, boosted way up there, just like the equal loudness contour says, and at different degrees of all those less and less boosted of subtraction, so that, you know, one of them is going to be pretty close, and then I'm going to start fussing with it, you know, and because every sound is a little bit different, and you might have to fuss with it here and there a little bit differently. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the equal loudness contour and that work in the next step in our equalization, and I'll see you in the next video when we deal with our last two phases and steps in the equalization.